When the 7-foot-tall woman across the table clicked her glossy mandibles and announced that our genetic compatibility was statistically irresistible, I realized, too late, that I should have stayed home and eaten microwave noodles. Up until that exact moment, the evening had been going suspiciously well. Which, in hindsight, should have been my first warning. My name is Daniel Harper, and if you asked anyone who knew me to describe me in one word, they'd probably say, fine. Not impressive. Not disastrous. Just fine. I worked data compliance for a mid-tier shipping firm, owned exactly 3 houseplants that were barely alive, and my most notable recent life event had been getting dumped via a politely worded calendar invite. Subject line, relationship debrief. Apparently I lacked forward momentum. So when my coworkers dragged me out for drinks that Friday night and started chanting that the galaxy was literally full of singles now, I should have ignored them. But after 2 glowing blue cocktails with names I couldn't pronounce and 1 regrettable shot that tasted like cinnamon mixed with engine coolant, downloading an Interstellar dating app seemed less like a terrible decision and more like personal growth. The app was called Galaxy Match. Its slogan floated across my phone in shimmering letters. Where intelligence meets instinct. I remember squinting at it and muttering, pretty sure my instinct is to order pizza. The profile setup asked invasive questions like preferred gravity range and tolerance for atmospheric variance. I selected flexible for most of them because it sounded optimistic. Then came the swiping. Most profiles looked intimidating: warrior poets, asteroid miners, someone who described themselves as a semi-retired hive monarch. I was seconds away from deleting the app when I saw hers. Her name translated roughly to Lyra, though the app noted it was an approximation because my vocal cords couldn't reproduce the harmonic undertones of her real name without minor surgery. Her profile read, curious traveler seeking open-minded partner interested in experiencing traditional pre-mating nourishment rituals. Must value emotional honesty. I snorted into my drink. Pre-mating nourishment, I said aloud. That is the most dramatic way anyone has ever described dinner. Her photo showed smooth violet skin that shimmered faintly like moonlit water, a tall, elegant frame, and bright eyes that somehow looked both intelligent and kind. Not intimidating. Not armored. No visible weaponry. Most importantly, she was smiling. I assumed it was either a bot or someone conducting anthropological research on mediocre humans. Either way, I swiped right. The match happened instantly. I blinked. She has terrible judgment, I told my phone. Her opening message arrived seconds later. I am delighted our paths align. Shall we share nourishment tomorrow? I typed back before common sense could intervene. Absolutely. I know a great place. Which was a lie. I immediately searched restaurants safe for multiple species, and picked the one with the least alarming reviews. The next evening, I stood outside the restaurant wondering if it was too late to fake my own abduction. The building hovered 3 feet off the ground, rotating slowly so that every table supposedly got an optimal planetary view. The sign shimmered in at least 6 languages, and every few seconds the entrance hissed open to release air that smelled faintly of citrus and something electrically charged. Inside, gravity felt lighter but not enough to be distracting. Floating menus drifted past like lazy jellyfish until customers tapped them. Chairs subtly reshaped themselves depending on who approached. A translucent barrier separated dining areas by atmospheric preference. I tugged at my jacket. Act natural, I whispered to myself. A host with 4 arms glided over and asked for my name. When I gave it, the creature consulted a hovering display and nodded approvingly. Ah. Interspecies courtship reservation. I laughed nervously. Let's call it a first date. It made a thoughtful clicking noise and led me to a table near a window overlooking the curve of the planet. Tiny cargo ships glittered in orbit like fireflies. Then I saw her. Lyra didn't walk so much as move with deliberate grace, each step balanced perfectly. Up close, the faint glow beneath her skin pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat visible to the world. She was taller than I expected, nearly a foot above me, but there was nothing threatening about her posture. If anything, she looked excited. "Daniel," she said, her voice layered with a musical resonance, as though two notes played at once. "I am pleased you manifested." "I try to manifest whenever possible," I replied, then immediately wondered what that meant. She made a soft chiming sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "Good. Joke success." We sat. The table adjusted height automatically. "I have studied human dining etiquette," she said. "You prefer conversational exchange prior to nourishment." "Big fans of talking," I confirmed. To my surprise, conversation flowed easily. She asked about Earth, what oceans sounded like, why humans decorated trees indoors, whether it was true we bonded with small carnivorous mammals for emotional support. I asked about her travels, carefully avoiding questions that might accidentally insult an empire. She told stories about nebula festivals and gravity surfing. I told her about office birthday cakes and the silent politics of shared refrigerators. At one point she leaned forward, fascinated. "You apologize frequently," she observed. "Even when no offense has occurred." "Occupational hazard," I said. "We're a very sorry species." Again, that chiming laugh. By the time the appetizers arrived, glowing spirals for her, something reassuringly bread-like for me, I found myself relaxing. This wasn't terrifying. This was nice. Possibly the nicest date I'd ever had. She listened. Really listened, the way people pretend to in movies but rarely do in real life. When I made a self-deprecating comment about being aggressively average, she tilted her head. "Average," she repeated thoughtfully, as if the word were exotic. "You maintained stable employment, long-term friendships, and survived emotional dissolution with reflective humor. These are not minor traits." No one had ever complimented my emotional dissolution before. I felt oddly taller. Halfway through the meal, she lifted a delicate crystalline glass filled with a softly glowing liquid. Her expression grew formal. "Daniel," she said, "it brings me profound anticipation to share this nourishment with you." I picked up my water. "To new experiences," I said. Our glasses touched with a clear, bell-like tone. She held my gaze. "By participating in the ceremonial exchange of sustenance," she continued, "we formally declare our mutual intent to pursue genetic continuation." I chuckled automatically. Then I noticed she wasn't smiling. "I'm sorry," I said. "Our mutual intent to what?" "To produce offspring," she clarified gently. My brain stalled. A soft chime came from the table. A small holographic notice flickered into existence between us. "Mating contract initiated. Recognized across 12 systems. Withdrawal penalties apply." I stared at it. Looked at her. Looked back at it. Somewhere in the restaurant, a piece of glassware shattered. Or maybe that was just the sound of my remaining sanity. "I thought this was dinner," I whispered. She blinked, glow dimming slightly in confusion. "It is," she said. "The first and most sacred step." For a few seconds, I became deeply, spiritually convinced that if I didn't move, breathe, or blink, the universe might forget I existed and quietly undo whatever catastrophic mistake had just been made. The holographic contract, unfortunately, did not forget. It hovered cheerfully between us, glowing in calm shades of blue, like it wasn't currently dismantling my entire future. Lyra tilted her head, watching me with gentle concern. "Your pupils have expanded by 23%, she said. "Is this a human signal of joy?" What? "No. Opposite of joy. Extremely opposite." She leaned back slightly, bioluminescent freckles dimming. "Have I misinterpreted your enthusiasm for genetic partnership?" "Yes," I said too loudly, drawing glances from a nearby table where something with 6 eyes paused mid-slurp. I lowered my voice. "I mean, not enthusiasm exactly. More like total ignorance." Her mandibles parted a fraction. The translator softened the clicking into something almost like a worried inhale. "You did not understand the nature of the invitation?" I thought pre-mating nourishment was flirting. Fancy flirting. Possibly alien marketing. She went very still. For a terrifying moment, I wondered if misunderstanding a mating ritual qualified as an act of war. The table chimed again. A polite, neutral voice flowed from the embedded AI. Congratulations on your union. Please review the primary clauses. Emotional withdrawal following ceremonial nourishment constitutes relational fraud under Interstellar Accord 17b. I pointed at the hologram with a shaking finger. Fraud? Lyra turned to read, her expression tightening slightly. That is standard language, she assured me. It protects participants from insincere bonding. What happens if someone withdraws? I asked faintly. The AI answered before she could. Penalties may include financial restitution, trade complications, and formal notation of dishonor for the offending party's species. My fork slipped from my hand and clattered onto the table. Species? I croaked. Lyra's glow dimmed further, shifting toward an anxious lavender. I was unaware humans approached courtship with such casual ambiguity, she said quietly. On my world, one does not share nourishment unless prepared for lifelong alliance. I once shared nachos with a coworker I actively disliked. I muttered. She studied my face, processing. This appears to be a significant cultural divergence. That is one way to describe it. I dragged both hands down my face and tried to breathe. Panic would not help. Panic had never helped anyone except, arguably, people being chased by predators. Think, Daniel. You work in compliance. Forms don't scare you. Okay, they do, but you survive them. There has to be a clarification process, I said. A cooling-off period? An oops, wrong checkbox option? Lyra opened the contract and scrolled with elegant flicks of her long fingers. There are dissolution pathways, she admitted. However, unilateral withdrawal immediately following nourishment is interpreted as emotional deception. I wasn't deceiving you. I was confused. She met my gaze. Intent is notoriously difficult to quantify across species. The AI chimed again. Would you like assistance planning your cohabitation timeline? No, I yelped. Several diners turned. I waved weakly. Just enthusiastic. Lyra folded her hands, watching me carefully. Something in her posture shifted, not anger, not quite embarrassment. Concern. Daniel, she said after a moment, did you accept this meeting under false pretenses? The question landed heavier than the contract. No, I said honestly. I wanted to meet you. I just didn't realize meeting you came with reproductive paperwork. She considered that. You could have declined my invitation. I assumed you meant dinner. Humans eat with people we barely tolerate all the time. That sounds inefficient. It is. Silence stretched between us. Then she surprised me. I selected you intentionally, she said. I blinked. You what? Humans have developed an intriguing reputation among several systems, she continued. You form resilient pair bonds. You demonstrate loyalty even when it is not logically optimal. Your species excels at creative problem-solving during emotional distress. That is the nicest possible description of our tendency to panic and improvise, I said. Her glow warmed slightly. When reviewing candidates, many projected dominance or genetic superiority. Your profile did not. That's because I have either. You projected steadiness, she corrected. And humor in the face of disappointment. I stared at her. No one had ever described me as steady before. Usually I got things like reliable or unlikely to cause a scene. You found that appealing? I asked. Very. My panic stumbled, confused by the sudden appearance of flattery. Okay. Focus. Flattery did not nullify contracts. I leaned closer and lowered my voice. All right. Hypothetically speaking, if someone wanted to avoid triggering diplomatic fallout while also not immediately becoming a parent, hypothetically, what would you recommend? She considered. Demonstrate good faith participation while pursuing a mutually respectful reassessment, she said. In other words, fake it until you find an exit. I could do that. Probably. I straightened, forcing my shoulders back. Well then, I said, attempting confidence, I am fully prepared to demonstrate excellent mate potential. She brightened instantly. Her freckles shimmered. Apparently that had been the correct thing to say. Encouraged, I reached across the table and took her hand. Or at least I tried to. I grabbed what I thought was her hand but turned out to be a secondary wrist joint. It flexed in a direction wrists absolutely should not flex. Oh no, I whispered, releasing it. Did I just propose something? Her glow intensified dramatically. You initiated a tactile affirmation, she said, voice softening. A very intimate gesture. Abort mission. Abort mission. Humans are extremely tactile, I said quickly. We touch everything. Door handles. Elevator buttons. Emotional boundaries. She made that charming laugh again, brighter this time. Trying to recover, I added. Your exoskeleton sheen is very striking tonight. The glow surged. Nearby diners glanced over, impressed. I leaned back. Was that bad? It was a direct compliment regarding reproductive vitality, she said. Of course it was, I muttered. Note to self, stop describing her biology. For a few minutes we ate in cautious silence. I focused on breathing normally and not accidentally agreeing to raise 1,000 larvae. Then she asked quietly, Are you displeased with the match? The vulnerability in her voice caught me off guard. This wasn't a predator trapping prey. This was someone who thought she just made a meaningful connection. And here I was mentally drafting escape routes. No, I said, surprising myself with how true it sounded. I'm overwhelmed. There's a difference. She studied my face, searching for dishonesty. Apparently satisfied, her glow softened into a calm, steady radiance. I am relieved, she said. The table chimed again. I flinched. Family notification dispatched. The AI announced pleasantly. Arrival estimated in 18 minutes. Please advise regarding celebratory seating expansion. I went cold. Family? I repeated. Lyra smiled, wide, proud, unmistakably happy. Only my closest 200 relatives, she said. The first thing I learned about Lyra's family was that they did not believe in subtle entrances. The restaurant lights softened automatically as the doors parted again and again, admitting what felt less like a group of relatives and more like a carefully organized planetary migration. Tall ones ducked beneath the archway. Small ones scuttled. Something vaguely gelatinous flowed politely along the floor and reassembled itself beside the table. I counted 12 before giving up. Breathe, I whispered to myself. You've survived performance reviews. You can survive this. Lyra rose gracefully. My kin, she said warmly. This is Daniel. My chosen partner. 200 sets of eyes, compound, luminous, vertical, and at least one that rotated independently, fixed on me. Every instinct I possessed suggested I climb out the window and drift into space. Instead, I waved. Hello? I said. Please don't evaluate me too aggressively. A tall figure stepped forward, carapace polished to a mirror shine. An older relative, judging by the slower movements and the faint silver threading through their glow. Fragile, the translator supplied after a series of melodic clicks. But upright. Promising. Thank you, I said weakly. I think. Another relative leaned in so close I could see my distorted reflection in their multifaceted eyes. A small device hummed as it passed over my torso. Bone density within survivable thresholds, the translator announced. Thrilled to hear it. Someone placed a platter in front of me that I was fairly sure had not existed 30 seconds ago. Celebratory seating expansion, apparently. The host reappeared with supernatural calm and began rearranging tables. Chairs multiplied. Atmosphere barriers shifted. A musician I hadn't noticed earlier started playing something airy and ceremonial. Lyra touched my arm lightly. There is no cause for alarm, she said. They are merely eager. Define eager. Invested in our reproductive success. Naturally. A smaller creature, child-sized but with far too many elbows, clambered onto an adjacent chair and stared at me with open delight. Tell a joke, it demanded through the translator. I'm sorry? Humor reveals neurological flexibility, Lyra explained softly. It is considered an attractive trait. No pressure, Daniel. Just be funny in front of 200 extraterrestrials who are actively imagining your genetic contribution. I cleared my throat. All right. Why did the human cross the road? Blank stares. To get to the… Actually, do you have roads? A pause. Then Lyra made that bright chiming laugh. A few others joined in hesitantly, their glows flickering with amusement. Encouraged, I tried again. Fun fact, humans pack bond with basically anything. Dogs, cats, robots, sometimes even office printers if they behave long enough. A ripple moved through the group. Several relatives exchanged impressed clicks. Adaptive attachment, one observed. Potentially stabilizing for brood cohesion. Another agreed. Wait. Was I winning them over? A stately figure adorned with what looked like ceremonial rings stepped forward. Tradition requires brief courtship trials, the translator declared. I blinked. Define brief. 3 demonstrations. Cognitive agility. Emotional regulation. Social wit. Lyra leaned closer. They are largely symbolic. I nodded slowly. Great. Symbolic trials. Love those. The cognitive test turned out to be a pattern puzzle projected in midair. Shapes rotated, colors shifted, sequences overlapped. Normally this is where my brain would excuse itself and go lie down. But years of staring at spreadsheets had apparently prepared me for this exact moment. I found the repeating interval. Touched the correct symbol. The puzzle dissolved into approving light. Mental persistence, someone noted. Next came emotional regulation. Without warning, a nearby relative slammed a limb onto the table, producing a thunderous crack. I jumped approximately 3 inches out of my chair but did not scream. Progress. Startle response contained, the translator observed. Mostly contained, I muttered. Finally, social wit. A broad-shouldered cousin leaned in. If our Lyra generates 400 offspring, what resources will you contribute? 400. Do not faint. Think humor. Humor is good. Well, I said carefully. Humans specialize in bedtime stories, conflict mediation, and teaching young beings the important difference between eating the remote control and not eating the remote control. A beat. Then laughter, real laughter, rolled through the group, layered and musical. Lyra's glow warmed into radiant gold. Acceptable, the cousin declared. I sagged with relief and grabbed a piece of bread like it was a flotation device. As the family's attention drifted toward food and conversation, Lyra guided me a few steps away to the quieter edge of the dining area. You performed exceptionally, she said. I performed survival, I corrected. She studied me for a moment, expression softer than I'd seen before. Most species regard humans as emotionally reckless, she admitted. You attach quickly. You grieve loudly. You persist even when logic suggests retreat. We do a lot of questionable things, I agreed. I see bravery in it, she said. The sincerity in her voice settled somewhere unexpected in my chest. Why me, though? I asked. There had to be candidates with better bone density. She gave a small, amused click. Your profile included a prompt, what is your greatest strength? I groaned. Oh no. I barely remember writing that. You answered I show up. Even when I'm afraid. Especially when I'm afraid. Heat crept up my neck. That sounds much wiser than I actually am. It sounded steady, she said simply. I have lived among brilliance and dominance. Steadiness is rarer than you believe. For a moment, The noise of the restaurant faded. No one had ever chosen me deliberately before. Not as a backup. Not as the safe option. Chosen. My gaze drifted back to the hovering contract still faintly visible near the table. An idea sparked. There is a dissolution clause, I said slowly. It requires mutual recognition of incompatibility. There is, she confirmed. So, theoretically, we could activate it. Freedom sat right there, within reach. No diplomatic incident. No species dishonor. No accidental army of children. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said gently, "If you wish to leave, I will release you." No anger. No accusation. Just disappointment carefully held behind composure. Something tightened in my chest. I imagined walking out, returning to my silent apartment, reheating noodles, telling myself it had all been absurd anyway. Safe. Predictable. Lonely. For the first time in years, someone extraordinary had looked at me and seen something worth choosing. My mouth opened before my caution could intervene. "What if," I heard myself say, "we tried an actual date first?" Her glow flared, bright enough that the ambient lights dimmed in response. Hope, unmistakable and luminous, spread across her features. The next evening, the restaurant seemed almost normal. No hovering holographic contracts, no AI announcing my penalties, and thankfully, no extended family showing up to evaluate my bone density. The chairs still adjusted to our weight, the menus floated lazily, and the subtle hum of interstellar ambience reminded me that we were very far from Earth. For once, I felt like I could breathe without calculating my genetic worth. Lyra arrived looking as radiant as ever, but this time, the glow beneath her skin seemed calmer, warmer, less ceremonial, more genuine. She smiled when she saw me, and for the first time, I didn't flinch, didn't panic, didn't imagine myself being catalogued for intergalactic reproduction. This wasn't a mating ritual. This was a date. Just a date. We sat, exchanged greetings, and the conversation began naturally. She asked about my day. I asked about her recent travels. We laughed over clumsy attempts at translating human idioms into her language, and she laughed at mine, the sound like a cascade of tiny bells. No pressure, no looming contracts, no diplomatic incidents. Just two beings talking and genuinely enjoying it. "So, Daniel," she said, "how do humans typically court one another? Is it a matter of ceremony or conversation?" I smiled. "Depends. Usually conversation first, dinner second, maybe a movie if we're feeling fancy. Definitely no contracts. Occasionally someone will trip over their own words or spill a drink." She tilted her head, intrigued. "No formal agreements?" "Not usually," I explained. "We rely on choice and mutual interest. Voluntary affection, you could say. Sometimes it works. Sometimes it doesn't. Mostly it's messy." Her glow shifted subtly as she considered this. "Messy? That sounds liberating." I nodded. "It is. The chaos is part of the point. You get to decide if you want to keep showing up, not because of law or ritual, but because it matters to you." She reached across the table and placed her hand over mine. Warm. Solid. Alive. "I see," she said softly. "So your species' greatest innovation in companionship is freedom of choice." "Something like that," I admitted, a grin spreading across my face. "And dessert comes after." We laughed together, and for the first time in months, I felt entirely comfortable. My pulse slowed, the tension I'd been carrying for weeks drained from my shoulders. The memory of the previous night, contracts, family, panic, remained, but it no longer ruled me. I realized then that I had learned something invaluable. No matter how far the galaxy stretched or how strange the customs, humanity's resilience lay not in physical strength, intelligence, or advanced technology. It lay in adaptability, humor, and the willingness to keep trying, even when the odds were absurd. Lyra leaned back, her expression thoughtful. "Daniel, when I first invited you, I assumed you would misunderstand everything. And yet, you did not flee. You faced confusion, chaos, and cultural complexity with persistence and, most importantly, curiosity. You are remarkably human. I laughed. Remarkably human? Yes, she said. And somehow very appealing. Your species does things differently, but I find the difference compelling. Her words made my stomach do something unfamiliar. Not fear, not panic, but warmth. I realized then that the absurdity of our first meeting, the contracts, the family inspection, the near-panicked attempts to survive, had led to something real. Something neither of us could have predicted. So, I said, feeling unusually bold, would you like to continue this human-style dating thing? Dinner first, conversation second, maybe ice cream if we're feeling adventurous? Her eyes twinkled. Yes. I would like that very much. We ordered, relaxed into the rhythm of a normal evening, and I noticed that everything felt lighter. Lyra's bioluminescent glow softened into gentle tones as we talked, laughed, and shared stories. There were no forms, no legal obligations, no looming interstellar ramifications. Just two beings discovering one another, completely voluntarily, completely alive to the moment. When the check arrived, I nearly panicked. On her planet, splitting a meal could have unintended cultural consequences. I held my breath as the waiter hovered, but she simply smiled and nodded toward the total. One check, she said firmly, and my relief was instantaneous. No accidental breakups, no premature contract triggers, just the simplest, most human gesture of cooperation. As we walked beneath the alien stars afterward, the city glittered like scattered jewels against the dark sky. Lyra's hand found mine, and I squeezed gently. We didn't need words. The warmth between us, the quiet trust, was more than sufficient. I realized, with a strange sense of pride, that somewhere across the galaxy, my species' greatest strength was quietly asserting itself, the ability to care, to choose, and to create meaningful connection even in the most absurd circumstances. You know, she said softly, her glow steady now, humans are extraordinary. I smiled. Turns out, we just needed the right context, and apparently, the right alien, to notice. We walked together, hand in hand, beneath alien skies, no contracts, no obligations, just choice. And for the first time since this entire interstellar disaster began, I felt like I truly belonged somewhere far from Earth, yet somehow completely at home. Because across billions of stars and countless species, I had discovered the most unexpected thing. The universe had a place for average humans after all. We were unpredictable, messy, and occasionally awkward. But we showed up, we persisted, and we loved in ways that no contract or ritual could enforce. And for Lyra, for the first time, I wasn't just a curious experiment, or a legally bound participant. I was someone she had chosen. And maybe, just maybe, I had chosen her too.